Welcome back to Around the Cauldron, where we talk theology, philosophy, and everyday life as a modern witch. Today, we're going to be discussing my personal views on the ethics of love magic. If you're ready to hop into the show, grab some coffee, pull up a seat, and join me around the cauldron. Before we talk about my ethical views on love magic, I have an announcement for you podcast listeners. I will be taking a break from the podcast for at least March and April. I have a lot of projects going at one time that all require a lot of work behind the scenes. This takes a lot of energy and time, and so I'm needing to rearrange my projects and figure out some priorities. While the podcast is on hold, I will instead be focusing on my YouTube channel and growing community. If this trial break turns out to be better for me mentally and personally, the podcast may end up on hiatus. I hope you all understand how much time and effort goes into creating the podcast as well as 2 YouTube videos a week. My hope with taking this break is that the quality of my content will get better when I have more time to focus on less projects. If you haven't already, I do hope that you will join me on YouTube, Discord, and my other social media, all of which will be linked in the show notes. What do you think of when you hear the term love spell? Do you imagine a witch sitting in their room, writing down the traits they desire in a partner? Do you picture this scene from Practical Magic where little Sally Owens creates a love spell called Amas Veritas, dreaming up a man that doesn't exist so she'll never die of a broken heart? Do you think of love potions and magical desire from unsuspecting partners? Love spells can be many things, and they don't always revolve around finding love from an external source. Love spells can be about attracting love to yourself, whether that be in the form of a partner or otherwise. They can be about learning to love yourself for who you are. They can even be about bringing in friendship to create a platonic bond of love. Love spells have a reputation in pop culture, from Amas Veritas in Practical Magic, Amortentia in Harry Potter, and Shakespeare's use of love and idleness by Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. I'm sure the reputation of love spells has changed over time, and I'd be curious to see how it changes in the future. But what happens when you start to get deep into love magic? Can you take things too far? And are there things you shouldn't do when it comes to love spells? This is when we start to think about our personal ethics. If you follow the Wiccan Rede, this is going to be, "An it harm none, do what ye will." If you don't follow the Wiccan Rede, your own ethical code might be different. Ethics is defined simply as a set of moral principles. These aren't things that society decides for us, though societal standards and your personal ethics may align. For example, most people would agree that murder is wrong. When working magic, though, your ethics are your own and no one but yourself and your gods get to tell you what to do with it. With that being said, I have a few things I want to discuss in terms of my own guiding ethics when it comes to love magic. These are things that I just won't do because I view them as unethical. My general guiding principle when it comes to most magic is that if I wouldn't do it without magic, then I shouldn't do it with magic. Of course, there are some exceptions, but for me, love magic doesn't have any. I googled the phrase, "love spell to force someone to love you." And not surprisingly, there are 64 million search results. I clicked on the first one that popped up, and it took me to a website that detailed how using this specific spell will, and I quote, "reunite you with your loved one, make someone fall deeply in love with you, or fix all your relationship or marriage problems. The spell then goes on to call on a deity and use their energy to break the person's will and make them fall in love with the caster for eternity, no matter what. When it comes to forcing people to fall in love with me, that's a big no thank you from me. The same thing goes for attracting a specific person by name to me. These are things that I wouldn't do without magic, and I wouldn't do them with magic either. I'm not a big fan of forcing people to do anything anyway, so this one is a no-brainer for me. When you think about it too, casting a spell like this and getting what you want may be nice and all, but how will you know their love is real? I'm not sure if that matters to anyone else, but that would really bother me. If their love wasn't real or true, I wouldn't want it anyway. I don't think it's ethical for me to force my desires onto someone else, and there are a few things that you could actually do instead. If you have your eyes on a specific person, you could instead focus on making yourself appear more attractive in whatever manner you want. Maybe you need more confidence, or maybe this person just doesn't know you exist. Creating a pathway for that love to blossom and grow naturally is a better pathway, in my opinion. Then it leaves room for truth and, if necessary, heartbreak. I don't think there's any sense in being happy if that happiness is based in a lie. Besides, you never want to start a marriage with a kidnapping. And what about breaking up a relationship for my benefit? I don't see this one in the online community very much, but I'm sure it still exists there. This is the magical equivalent of being a homewrecker, and again, I wouldn't do that without magic, so I won't do that with magic either. There is a difference, though, in breaking up a relationship for your benefit versus the benefit of those involved. If the relationship is toxic, and it's clear that it's toxic for whatever reason, not just you wanting them to break up, you might consider causing the breakup as a love spell. This would involve casting the spell out of caring love like that of family or friends, with the intent to let the people in the relationship see the truth of what's going on. That gets tricky though, so you'll have to consult your own ethics there. I think if you're looking to break up a relationship for your benefit, meaning you want to get with one of the people involved, then you should probably do some soul searching and figure out why this is what you want. Lust is one of those things that falls right in line with love for me. If I wouldn't force someone to desire me without magic, I'm not going to do it with magic. There are plenty of other ways to handle this situation without ruining friendships, lives, or leaving you or the other person with a guilty conscience. Instead of casting love spells to make someone lust after you, you could use glamours to make yourself attractive to them, gain the confidence to approach them on your own, or even just get them to notice you. With this type of spell, I would leave it open for the other person to say no. Lastly, always be careful what you wish for. What happens if you force a person to desire you for all eternity, like the example I mentioned before, and it turns out you actually don't like them as much as you thought you did? What if they have bad habits that you just can't get over? Or they're rude to the staff at restaurants? A deal breaker for me, honestly. Or what if they're abusive? Or they're clingy? Or just needy? What if the desire you thought you wanted isn't actually close to what you want at all? We all have our fantasies, the things we think we want or want to do, but sometimes those are just fantasies. It isn't until they actually happen that we realize, maybe I don't actually want this. If there are things that you just can't get over in this person or situation that you've created, what are you going to do? Are you going to solve that problem with magic too? Where would you draw the line? I think having these discussions, even if you're only thinking about it yourself, is important to growing in your craft. It can be hard to discuss things like this with other practitioners, especially if you don't believe the same way they do. I can tell you right now that if someone tells me it's perfectly ethical to force someone to love you, I'm probably going to tell you that I believe you're wrong. The main thing this boils down to is consent. And even this is a tricky topic to discuss, because where do you draw the line with consent? Do you cast spells on other people without their permission, or do you not? There are also those who believe that magic on others will only work if their energy is in line with what you want. Using this logic, it would be perfectly acceptable to cast a spell on someone to make them love you, because if they don't, or there's no potential there, the spell simply won't work. At the end of the day, I can't tell you how to practice, nor can anyone else. I also think this topic is not as simple as many people believe. Ethics is an entire philosophical belief system that people hold, and since people are so vastly different, this philosophical system is going to be different for everyone. So how do you view love magic? Do you cast love spells? If you'd like to try a spell for attracting love into your life, I have a spell jar recipe on my website that I'll link in the show notes. I'd be curious to know how you view love magic, so feel free to reach out on social media and let me know. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast and being here with me. As I said at the beginning, the podcast itself is taking a break for March and April and might be on hiatus longer. If you'd like to continue listening and watching, all of my social media will be in the show notes, and I hope to see you over on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter for updates about the podcast and its future. Until next time, be kind to each other.